So tonight is the second night of our series on the Four Noble Truths. So we'll be doing the second noble truth, the cause of suffering. And my name is Denise. I'm one of the 6 Dharma leaders here at IMCC, and I welcome you to IMCC. So I mentioned at my last talk that a couple of nights before my last talk, I had been trying to get home from work to prepare it, and wound up getting a flat tire on the way home. So that kind of put a kibosh on my plans to get the talk done. So that was a little nerve-wracking. So when I tried putting this talk together over the last week, I wanted to kind of get a move on and make sure I had it done in plenty of time in case another tire went flat. So I went to go sit down to start writing it, but something didn't seem right. Oh no, my laptop is dying. So they say when the time is right, the teacher appears. So in that moment, I was well aware of my suffering due to clinging and not wanting my laptop to die. I suppose I should have been more grateful because this experience was going to write the talk for me. So let's begin with an overview of the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is that inherent in life is suffering and pain. It doesn't mean that all life is pain. It just means part of life is pain. So things are impermanent. We'll have some happiness, but we're also likely to have some suffering. In Pali, the language at the time of the Buddha, the word for suffering is dukkha. Also can be translated as unsatisfactoriness or dis-ease or unease. The second noble truth is the cause of that suffering, our subject tonight: clinging, craving, and grasping, wanting things to be a certain way. And the third noble truth is the solution to end the suffering. And that is not to cling. It's to let go of that clinging and that craving. The fourth noble truth is how to get to the solution, the Eightfold Path. Philip Moffat, in his book, Dancing with Life, gives the analogy of going to the doctor with a problem, suffering, and getting the diagnosis, clinging, and then getting the cure, don't cling. And the medicine for the cure is the Eightfold Path. For transparency, this book was a major resource for me tonight in writing this talk. The Buddha stated, when the mind starts to crave, suffering will inevitably arise. It's natural for our thoughts to arise. It's natural for our desires to arise. It is what we do with these thoughts and desires that either can lead to a beneficial outcome or to suffering. Moffat wrote, "It is the unchecked desire that causes the mind to contract as it idealizes and clings to the imagined outcome." It is the unchecked desire that causes the mind to contract when it idealizes and clings to an imagined outcome. When we contract into these desires, it narrows our world into just these things we want, these outcomes. Yet we miss everything else that's happening around us that is our life. All craving is based in desire, but not all desire devolves into craving. When we have craving, our mind is caught up in greed, aversion, or delusion, what's known as the 3 defilements. According to Sean Oakes at the Spirit Rock Center, the teaching of the 5 aggregates of clinging was one of the primary ways that the Buddha analyzed human experience. And these 5 aggregates are direct experience of material form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. They are the practical and mental components of our personality and our sensory experience as we traverse our life, this world. Each of these 5 elements is present in each and every one of all of our experiences. And this happens at lightning speed. So if we are not present with our attention, we are likely to miss this phenomenon. So let's go through these aggregates in a little bit more detail. The first aggregate is material, element, or form. These are the forms in our environment, such as food, chair, heat, floor, etc. And these are detected by our sense organs: the eyes, the ears, the nose for smelling, the taste with our tongue, and then the mind for cognition or thought. It is through these senses that we experience our material world. In this particular case, my ears were hearing a sound. The second aggregate is feelings, not feelings like emotions, but the raw, immediate experience when we come in contact with one of these material forms. So it will present as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. In this particular case that I had, the experience in the material world was unpleasant, of the whirl that I was hearing from my computer. The third aggregate is perception. It's our recognition in the nervous system of the form we are experiencing, either identifying or interpreting this sensory information that is coming in. And this is prior to any awareness of judgment. It's an immediate recognition that can then be followed by mental labeling. My laptop is dying. These first 3 aggregates of the material form, the feelings, and the perception is without intention. It happens automatically, so there is no karmic impact. It's not volitional action. It's without our intention. But when we get to the 4th aggregate of mental formations, there is karmic impact. This is where our mental reactions, attitudes, and habitual tendencies towards the pleasant, the unpleasant, and the neutral experiences occur. We crave more of the pleasant, and we shun the unpleasant. And here's where greed for the pleasant can develop, hatred for the unpleasant experience can happen, and then we get clinging to wanting things to be a certain way. The nervous system wants us to move towards those things we like and away from those things we don't. But when we pursue more of the pleasant, or we are trying to run away from the unpleasant, that's where suffering occurs and arises. Based on what we know, we then apply labels and judgment. In this particular case, dang laptop, how can you do this to me now? Like there was going to be a better time for my laptop to die. At the point of the mental formations, we have that karmic impact. Here is where we have the opportunity for discernment of our intentions and volition over our actions, our choices. And the 5th aggregate of clinging is consciousness, knowing that you know, and awareness of the object through our sense faculties. I know this laptop is dying. All in each of these aggregates is impermanent. It's not lasting. Thus, if we cling, we will suffer. In the Buddha's fire sermon, the Pali word that is translated as clinging is upadana, which literally means feeding our suffering. The 5 aggregates of clinging are a type of fuel that fire our attachment. Another Pali word that can be used for clinging is tanha, and this means thirst, to have a thirst for something. On that note, I am going to take a little sip of water. I'm glad I put that in there. So the Buddha described 3 distinct types of tanha: sensual desires, desire for becoming, and desire for non-becoming. Let's look at these a little more closely. There are 6 types of sensual desires. The craving for a certain food taste, pleasing sounds, sounds of silence, craving for sexual, affectionate, and comforting touch, inspiring sights, pleasant, refreshing smells, and for thoughts that are comforting, useful, stimulating, and reassuring to us. The second type of craving is a desire for becoming what you are not at this point. Okay? And, forgive me. And Philip Moffat points out, your desire can be very wholesome and still cause suffering. Say you have a desire to cure cancer, but that desire can cause suffering to the untrained mind because it may lead to uncontrolled wanting, impatience, temptations, unskillful words or actions. And the third type of craving is for non-becoming. It's that you want to get rid of some aspect of your being, yourself, craving therefore non-existence. Say something about your physical appearance, perhaps something about your personality, or maybe even something about your history. Suffering comes from how our minds are in relationship to our experience. The recognition and the reaction to our experience is colored by our views, beliefs, and ideas of the way we think things should be, versus reality, and as if we know better than reality. Moffat has a headline in one of his chapters. It says, "Suffering equals your pain multiplied by your resistance." Suffering equals your pain multiplied by your resistance. I used to have a patient who would drink a concoction of garlic and oregano oil for her health. My nose and olfactory bulb in my brain had no choice but to receive this onslaught of odor, material form hitting the sense organ. The feeling was unpleasant due to the intensity. The immediate perception was of being submerged in a vat of garlic. My mental formation was for the session to be over so I could get away from that strong smell of someone else's breath. I would try to distance myself to the absolute max of my arm's length, okay, that it could allow, and took fewer breaths. But I also tried to remind myself it was temporary. I was very conscious of the experience. I was craving to avoid the experience. I was trying still, though, to be pleasant to the patient because I wanted to be regarded as a good and compassionate therapist. And I wanted to not be seen as a ninny, too OCD to handle someone else's breath. And on the note of desire devolving into clinging, I want you to know, honestly, I had pizza every night after that patient came in. So what does clinging feel like? I'd like to invite everyone to just take a moment right now to just close your eyes if you feel comfortable to do so. And take a moment to think of something you would like to have happen, a desire. Scan your body. Where and how does that yearning feel in the body? When you think of this desire, what is the reaction? What is the feeling? Is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Now I'd like you to think of something that you don't want to be, either for yourself or for someone else in your experience. something you want to have go away or vanish. How does that feel in your body? Is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Is your mind starting to have thoughts about this? Are you finding any movement in your body towards that or away from that, or both? Have you found these desires or aversions in your meditation sessions? Have they hindered your meditation sessions? Does clinging bring you freedom from suffering? Now, if you'd like to open your eyes. Clinging is future-oriented, what you desire to have happen. For something pleasant to occur or avoidance of an unpleasant situation, or perhaps not wanting to lose what you already have. And if you got what you wanted, would it last? And if it wouldn't last, do you find that to be pleasant or unpleasant? And do you think your passion, some time from now, whether it be a month, a year, or many years, the passion you have for that treasured object, would it be the same? Or would it dissipate with time? Clinging is not present moment living, it is suffering. Author and spiritual teacher Michael Singer said, "You have problems because you have a way you want things to be. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. The great way is not difficult for those who prefer everything that is." What if you liked and enjoyed everything, rather than separating reality into what you do and don't like? I do agree. I think that would be a tall order, but one worth pursuing without clinging. Letting go. Live life as an adventure, a journey to discover and explore and experience, rather than a battle between my desires for something to be the way I want it and under my control, versus reality. Like the Far Side cartoon of the kid who is trying to push the door open with all of his might, but the sign above his head says pull. Okay. So how can we work with this teaching, and how do we detect clinging? Philip Moffitt offers a teaching looking at the 3 insights for each noble truth. And the first insight would be to reflect on the noble truth. So in this one, we're looking at what is the cause of suffering. Do we notice that clinging is a cause of suffering? The second insight is to have direct experience, to feel it in the body with a mindful, compassionate awareness. The third insight is to have, for the noble truth, is a knowing. Do you find that this is true? Ehipassiko, come and see for yourself. He says in our experiences to know both the wow and the ouch of it. He challenges us to find a healthy relationship between seeking what is wholesome, while at the same time acknowledging the inevitability of loss, disappointment, and failure. Mindfully integrating what we have learned and felt in our daily life so as not to rapidly return to our habits. So in your meditation, you can try to recognize moments of clinging. You might find, sometimes I find this in my body, a leaning forward. That's what Joseph Goldstein calls it, a leaning forward. You can also try during your meditation to capture that moment when that heat or the air conditioning system changes. Is that pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Are you experiencing an unpleasantness and asking, what is it now that I don't have? Ask if the clinging is suffering or not suffering. Do we have an aversion to our actual experience of clinging? If you're a meditator who's trying really hard, that might be a little frustrating and unpleasant. Or we might be desiring non-clinging. Take a look at that too. Feel it in the body, watch the mind. Are you exhausting your energy reserves because you won't let go? Are you, am I, the source, the true source of suffering, rather than the circumstance I am facing or you are facing? There was a woman on a podcast that I'm sorry I don't recall her name, but she said we often invest much of our resources, both of our mind, our physical, our financial, etc., to achieve a certain goal. And even if it's not working out, we press forward. We find ourselves unable to let go due to our investment and not wanting to lose the investment, despite the overwhelming cost. This is suffering. Why continue? I love this quote by Philip Moffat. When we reach spiritual maturity, your life is based on being in the moment, rather than the outcome of the moment. He wisely states, when you are not clinging to what you want, your life becomes much easier. Tell me more about this. But alas, this is a cliffhanger. You will need to tune in next Wednesday for the third noble truth, which is the cessation of suffering. And then Wednesday, March 26th, for the how-to prescription of the Eightfold Path. How we can practically and skillfully give up this clinging to find the maximum amount of harmony, equanimity, and peace that is available to us in each moment.